Tirades. My name's Sean, and I'm joined by my co-hosts Dale, Paul, and Adam. Gentlemen, I have some knowledge that's going to blow your mind. Time is linear.
How do you know that?
Fellas, we're getting older. There's no doubt about it.
No proof at all.
Well, look at your beard.
How do I look at my own beard? What are my eyes on stalks?
You have a webcam in front of you. What are you talking about? How do you look at your own beard?
I can look at an image of my beard. I can't look at my beard. Okay.
If you had a better beard, you could look at your own beard.
I can kind of see my mustache.
Says the guy. Yeah, all I have is a mustache. So, anyway, back to my scripted intro. And just like most older people, I thought we could take some time and reminisce on the days gone past. More specifically, I thought we could discuss the 90s. But before we even get into that, I'm bringing back current events. I want to talk about a current event. I have one that I wanted to talk about, but do you all have any current events that you want to bring up?
I think the only current event I have to bring up is that we should come up with a theme song for the current events and play it like a segment of the show.
That sounds awesome.
Valid. I will remember that. As I'm editing this, I'll be like, oh yeah, Dale has a valid point. And I'll try to find one. I'll painstakingly try to find another theme song or intro.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is the only valid point I've made in years. You know, we're going to put this on the calendar and celebrate it every 28th of April.
Yeah.
It'll be like our Hanukkah.
So, I have one story in particular that I wanted to bring up, which I think is just crazy. I'm sorry if I constantly bring up military stuff, but if you haven't heard of this, have you all heard of this National Guard, Air Force National Guardsman who has completely leaked top secret information on Discord?
Sounds familiar, actually. But I don't know much about it.
Okay, so you don't know much about it. Dale, have you heard about this National Guardsman who leaked top secret government information, military information?
I heard something about him, bit of an antisocial little fella, sings and capers.
Let me build the scene for you. So we have, I believe, a 21-year-old man who had some mental issues, I believe, growing up in high school, who I believe at the age of 18 applied to own a weapon and was denied, and it was denied due to the mental issues or whatever issues he had growing up in high school. He then joined the Air Force National Guard. I'm not certain of his specific job, but obviously he dealt with some secret information, intelligence information. And Dale, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. I'm just laughing at the fact that they would give secret information to a man that they wouldn't give a handgun.
Well, he later applied again for a handgun after he joined the military and got his weapons. He was allowed to get a weapons permit and such based off of his military service. So anyway, he was a part of a Discord group, and this Discord group was essentially, I might be incorrect, but from what I thought I read, it was a Discord group kind of dedicated to military grade gear. And this guy liked to brag. He liked to show off and he liked to be the center of attention. And because he had access to very, 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 very secret information, he liked to show it off in this Discord group. And this has been going on for a while. And the amount of information that he has leaked is astronomical.
Really?
For instance, he had access to information such as like how much South Korea was willing to give Ukraine for the war effort, and the South Korea's specific qualms with providing to the war effort, and how the U.S. was going to treat South Korea if they did not partake in this proxy war as much. And they had very specific battle locations of troops in Ukraine at this very moment, within the last 2 weeks even, of where these troops were, and Russian intelligence and counterintelligence and things of that nature. Like, I'm talking top secret stuff that could very easily kill lots of people if it went into the wrong hands. And there's much more than that. That barely, what I just told you, scratches the surface of the stuff that he leaked.
Okay, but unless I misheard you, this is like a guy who's been in the National Guard for 3 years?
Yeah.
Why does he have access to this information at all? That's the bigger issue.
Great point, Adam. Great point. And what I'd like to counter with that is the fact that since this has been leaked and become public knowledge that has been leaked, the headquarters, basically the Pentagon, has taken the entire mission from that unit. I don't remember the specific unit, 173rd Intelligence something or other. I don't remember. They no longer have a mission set because it has been deemed by the Pentagon that they are not doing things correctly. And basically, someone of his low rank should never have had that much access. And the fact that they let someone of that nature get to that level completely destroyed. I'm talking like his commander has been relieved. His that unit no longer has a mission. So a lot of people are going to lose their jobs because, I mean, you're dealing with the National Guard. So there are some people who have a full-time job with, from the government there. They're not going to have a job anymore. If I had to take a guess, this is all a guess. But this is a catastrophic event. It's very significant, and it completely destroys it didn't destroy, but it shows just how much the U.S. has, as far as fingers in everybody's pies. It's crazy, and it really brought to light how much we have, and there was no escaping it. Of course, if you Google it, it's hard to find what exactly was leaked. I mean, there are snippets about here, this is what, this is that, this is this. But I have found more information from, as sad as it is to say, but Facebook Reels, people that are make their content based off of current events and news stories. And a lot of what I found from there, at least, was that there's a lot more to this story that mainstream news coverages are not covering, probably because they don't want to make Uncle Sam mad. I don't know.
Well,
I mean, maybe you could tell me this, but to me, the whole notion that you have some National Guard unit doing that type of intelligence work is just weird. Shouldn't that be something for the higher levels of the Army itself, or whatever, the CIA? I don't know.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I was unaware of how much the Air Force had as far as counterintelligence and intelligence goes. I was kind of taken aback by that. I knew that the Army had that, but I was unaware that the Air Force had that. I didn't know that it was a multiple branch thing. I thought it was like the Army's got it. Don't worry, boys. Like, I don't know.
I don't know, man. Like, that kind of makes sense to me. That's clicking. Because the Air Force has aerial capabilities. Where are you going to get your best surveillance from? You know, ground level? I mean, some of it you're going to need aerial surveillance.
Yeah,
You know what
okay.
I mean?
If you put it like that, that makes sense.
Yeah, but I mean, like, not to put down the National Guard, but I always thought of the National Guard as they're just like, you know, basically like the extra troops, the reserve, right? That's what it is, and they come in when there's like we need extra troops for a war, or we need to, you know, get people into civilian exercises that maybe the actual military can't spare enough men for, things like that, right?
Not to get too into the military structure, but you have, let's say, active Army, where me, who gets stationed anywhere Uncle Sugar depends or puts me, and I'm here for until I am no longer I no longer have a contract with the United States government that mandates me in my service to a certain location. And they send me wherever they want me. Afghanistan, Iraq, Bahrain, Korea, all those places I've been. But then you have the reserves. The Army Reserves, they go and they play Army once a month. And they, put on their uniforms, make sure they still fit, take a PT test, and shoot their guns, and then go back to being a civilian, essentially. And then you have the National Guard. And the National Guard is a kind of a different beast because that is, you got to think back, like all the way back to the Revolutionary and Civil Wars. This is your like state militia. That's what the National Guard is. That is, their main bosses are generals in their state. And then it goes up to the Pentagon after that. But their main chain of command is all in their own state. And they're supposed to handle stuff like natural disasters or for instance, Texas was having the incredible, issues with Mexicans crossing the border or whatever. So Texas activated their National Guard initially to go over there and handle that problem. So they handle state issues. And then, yes, they do still deploy to like Afghanistan and places like that. But it's a weird drug deal kind of with the active Army and stuff.
Okay, I was kind of confusing them with the reserve.
The more you describe them, the more I think they sound like, rednecks, but if steroids were mandatory for them, they're like super rednecks that are genetically engineered to help with things. I just imagine them showing up like after a disaster in huge military pickup trucks, with like bottled water and for some reason automatic weapons. They're just like, here, take it. Take the guns too, whatever you need. That boy crossing your property, not for long.
That paints a pretty good picture in my mind, I think. That makes sense.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dale. There's there's more current events. King Charles' coronation will be on Saturday, 6 May.
All the other recent King Charles have done really well and have had no negative things happen to them, so I feel like this guy should be pretty stoked to be the next Charles in line.
What a legacy.
Jerry Springer died.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That is crazy.
Emmett Till's accuser died. That was, a bit overdue.
Not as up to date on that one.
Well, I wouldn't imagine D.A.R.E happened in, like the 50s or something? 40s?
Then, yeah, that's probably why I'm not up to date on it.
And she died at
All
like
right.
88.
I'm going to read a quote. Okay, Dale, I think I've read this quote to you specifically before, so hold what you got. But unless you've forgotten, Dale, which is possible because you may have been drunk, I don't know when we had this conversation.
Hard to tell.
If the goal of me reading this quote is I want you to tell me when it was said in time. Was it last week? Was it a millennia ago? I'm going to read it out to you. I want you to tell me when it was said. The children now love luxury. They have bad manners, contempt for authority. They show disrespect for elders and love chatter in place of exercise. Children are now tyrants, not the servants of their households. They no longer rise when elders enter the room. They contradict their parents, chatter before company, gobble up dainties at the table, cross their legs, and are tyrants to their teachers.
I believe that was said at 10:56 p.m. on April the 28th.
Good job,
What
Dale.
year?
2023.
Oh, I was going to say it was probably in the 90s. 95.
I'm gonna guess like 1920, somewhere around there, maybe earlier.
I am going
The
to
word
guess
dainties.
Sumeria.
We don't have
You're gonna guess
recorded
what?
text from 1920.
Sumeria. I'm going to guess Sumeria. I'm going to guess that this was the earliest written word that human beings have recovered.
This is in the Epic of Gilgamesh.
Oh, older than that.
Okay, so I'm not going to tell you the exact date because I don't have the exact date, but I'm going to tell you who said it.
Mm-hmm.
Socrates.
Oh, okay. A little younger than what I thought.
What?
So
Yeah.
why I said that, right? Because I often hear, and I do agree to some extent, that the generational gap between our generation, well, we're millennials, right? Everyone in here is a millennial, and the most current generation is gigantic. That they have no respect, that they are, weak and pathetic, or that they're more timid, or whatever the case may be, right? And I thought it's really interesting to read this quote from Socrates that kind of says the same thing, maybe not in so many words, maybe not the exact same relations, but kind of says the same thing about how they viewed their younger generation. And I thought that was really interesting before we started branching off into the discussion of what are some of the key differences from the 90s to now.
So that makes me think of two things, really. One is like, I think it's possible that both sentiments are right, and that it just sort of echoes throughout history, right? They were having problems with their youth, and so are we. And I was just thinking about this a few weeks ago, actually, and I was talking to one of my friends about it, and he agreed with me. And it's that even though that seems like a thing that every generation says, when I look at the three youngest generations that we have, like not the one that hasn't been named yet, I'm talking about Gen X, us, and Zoomers. I feel like I have a lot in common with the Gen Xers. I have a lot of friends who are Gen Xers. I got along with them pretty well. I feel like there is a much bigger gap between us and the Zoomers than there is between us and the Gen Xers. I don't know.
Two things. One, that quote made from Socrates, I guessed it was so old because I've heard scuttlebutt. I don't know if it's true. That the oldest translated bit of human writing was basically some old man saying basically that. Like, these kids are terrible these days, get off my lawn. Old man yells at clouds. But the second point I want to make is I don't know that that's necessarily true. I find the opposite. I think that millennials and Zoomers have more in common than either want to admit to each other, and that both of us are slightly more different to Gen X than we are to each other. Like, you look in terms of like our comedy and entertainment, and there's a lot of similarity there that just is not present in the culture that Gen X made.
That's interesting that you say that, and that makes me wonder what generation were your parents?
Baby boomer.
Very end of the baby boomer generation.
So were mine, which makes me. That was why I thought maybe I saw more in common with Gen X, but I don't know if yours were too.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it depends largely on what entertainment you and what culture you immersed yourself in when you were young. If you were hanging out with more of a Gen X crowd watching more MTV, or if you
I was, yeah, because my sister was Gen X.
Okay.
She's 19 years older than me, so a lot of things from when I was young I got from her. So
that makes sense.
Whereas we were making things up as we go. We had our own entertainment. That was something that was great about the 90s. There was just this complete divide between what the kids were doing and what the former generation had done. Like, there wasn't continuity. We had a bunch of brand new stuff that wasn't a continuation of other things.
Oh, I thought you were just talking about, like, we didn't have constant entertainment shoved in our face through a broadband pipeline all day, so we would, like, sit and make up our own games and stuff.
Well, we did that too.
Because I know I used to do that. I thought that's where you were going. But...
No, it's more like Gen X had their version of the cool new rock music, right? Gen X had their version of the radio. Gen X had their version of TV. They had MTV. But it was all the same stuff that the boomers had, but their own version of it. We had brand new things that never existed, like handheld video games and computers. And
I was going to say, it's kind of interesting. I actually made a note to bring this up, that the 90s was kind of a unique gateway into the technological advances that we see today. But I don't think in the 90s, it's safe to say, in my opinion, that we hadn't completely disconnected ourselves from how we approached each other. I don't know if that's the right way of saying it, but
that probably didn't happen until like 2010.
That okay, and that's what I was going to say. The early 2000s to a little bit later on is when cell phones became like a much more commonplace to have, and now everybody has one. And it was just, I don't know where I'm trying to go with this, other than the fact that in the 90s, I felt like everybody was able to communicate so much more effectively than what they have today via text or whatever the case may be.
Everything just kind of keeps progressing to what the later generation, they'll just say, oh, it just keeps getting worse and worse. Like, who's to say, like, we're always stuck in our phones, and then, like, what, maybe the next generation, they got, like, the fucking Neuralink or some shit going on, so they're just, like, fucking just sitting back in their chair, like, zonked out of their mind, like, maybe they're, like, fucking playing video games in their brains at that point, and then they're really not going to talk to you. Like, I could slap a phone out of your hand and be like, hey, listen, but if you're like fucking off in like goddamn Quest World or something, it's it's the same with like music. Music always gets a little bit more extreme, but is it really worse? Or kids are getting ruder. I don't know, but we're not stoning our children anymore for being out of line.
I don't know. I've heard, again, this is scuttlebutt. Take it with a grain of salt. Look up the details for yourself. Maybe I'm wrong. But from the things I've heard and some of like the Zoomer stuff that I have seen floating around the infosphere, it seems that younger millennials and Gen Zers are abandoning the idea of intoxication in droves. Like, they're the most sober generation in decades and decades. They are downgrading tech left and right. There's this whole flip phone thing going on now. Like, I think that there's going to be a backlash to the trend of the last couple generations, which makes sense. I mean, there was a backlash in the 50s to all the crazy shit that happened in the 30s and 40s,
I know you mentioned that flip phone thing before, but I still haven't seen that. Like, I mean, I guess you're not going to see that on TikTok, because what do they fucking film that with?
Exactly.
I guess.
That's the whole point.
I don't know, but I'm like, I still see young kids like on there by, the dozens of them or thousands, and there's like, I don't think everybody's doing that. And I mean,
No.
with the kids doing their little trends where they want to be like, oh, I'm cool, I'm really old school, I use a flip phone. That's not going to stop like actual like science and things from progressing, and people are there's still going to be the people that want newer technology. Like, just a few kids setting trends aren't going to change all that. So we're still going to be progressing, and then the next generation is going to be like, oh, they're using flip phones. That's lame that they're trying to be these weird past living hipsters. I'm definitely going to the newest technology ever now, just to spite them. It's just, you just want to be different than the last generation. Nobody wants to be exactly the same.
You're not wrong. I kind of think back to the Facebook memes of like whenever, oh, your mom started using Facebook, so now everyone's got to move over to Twitter or whatever the case may be, which I still don't understand social media even in the slightest.
Yeah.
I wish I did. I'd probably make this podcast a lot more successful if I did. But
hey, I told you to make a Twitter account.
You did, and I still haven't. Anyway, I wanted to kind of back off of that conversation a little bit. When I think of 90s, because I was a young child at the time, I think of toys. I think of playing outside. I think of stick fights.
Yeah.
A lot. But when we talk about toys specifically, what kind of toys do you all remember? When I say toys, it's a broad sentiment, because I'm thinking Pokemon cards.
Hell yeah.
I'm thinking of Pogs.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So let me hear what you guys got.
Soccer boppers.
Soccer boppers?
Sock'em boppers?
Yeah, whatever it was.
More fun than a pillow fight?
Mm-hmm.
I got those for my kids.
Yeah.
They used
I'm
them
sure
so
they're
much
thrilled.
that they popped them.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. Let the kids hit
Timeless,
things.
man.
This way you can beat the shit out of each other without knocking out teeth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's a very smart idea on the parents' part.
Take out your frustration.
You can order them on Amazon still. That's how I
Nice.
did it. I ordered them on Amazon. My son loved them. So much so, though, that he popped them. And so we had to throw them away. We had to get new ones. They come with like little repair kits, but they're absolute shit, and they don't really work.
I know Nerf guns, those were super big in the 90s as
Ooh,
well.
yeah.
Those are a lot of fun.
Super
I was-
Soakers!
Yeah, Super Soakers
yeah.
Oh,
as
yeah.
well. I was thinking of that, and then just like tons of action figures like Ninja Turtles and shit.
G.I.
Can't think
Joe.
of anything more 90s than a Ninja Turtle action figure.
I think Power Rangers are more 90s.
That's true.
That was,
Turtles
like,
started
a
in
big
the
thing for
80s,
me.
I guess, but
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I could argue that the most 90s toy set was the Pokemon things, starting with the card game and then moving on to the first gen video games. I still
Late
remember.
90s, yeah. Early 90s.
Yeah, true. But in the early 90s, I was like 2 and 3. I vaguely remember those weird puzzle piece floor mats,
Oh,
and Thomas the Tank
Oh,
Engine
yeah.
toys because I was like 2.
Oh, you love Thomas Tank Engine. Dale, do you remember Bop It?
I remember taking the Bop It apart because I thought I was going to be a little engineer and put it
You-
together.
I'm still
And then
mad
it was
at you
broken
about that.
forever.
We were at Grandma's house,
hmm
and you were like, I'm going to take it apart. I was like, why? It works. Don't do that. And you're like, oh, I want to see how it works. And then you took it apart, and you're like, I don't know how to put it back together. I was like, good. I hate you.
Yeah.
I had one of those.
Bop It.
I also,
Beat it.
what about, I had a Yak Back, which is kind of like what it's kind of the same idea as like the Talk Boy tape recorder that Kevin had in Home Alone 2, but it was just like a little plastic thing you would record and then play it. And then like the more advanced ones later, you could like slow it down and speed it up to distort their voice. And I had a Yak backwards, so you could play it backwards then.
Ah,
And I'd say that's a pretty 90s thing. Oh, and GAC. Like
Oh,
Nickelodeon
yeah.
GAC shit.
Gak, Floam,
Floam.
Slime.
Yeah.
Koosh Balls.
This is never going to end.
No.
90s had a ton of toys.
Beanie Babies.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
never,
remember.
I never collected them or anything, but I know that they were a 90s
Yeah.
thing.
I just remember like all the like middle-aged women were like going crazy for that was like the first like time I ever like experienced like some kind of like craze where people were just like buying up as many as they can and like hoarding them. And it was like all these like middle-aged women, and they're like, they're gonna be worth something one of these days. Bullshit. I can get like the whole set for like $13 on eBay now. You lied.
They wasted their life savings on Beanie Babies. All right. We should sympathize with them a little more for being so dumb.
Yeah. I don't hate them. I
They
just
still have it. They still have their hoard. Like one day
as long
it's
as they
gonna be
enjoy
worth
them.
something.
I'll pass these along to my children with my baseball card collection and my box of assorted socks.
So you're right. We could talk about toys forever. So let's move on to another topic of discussion for the 90s that kind of sets it apart in time. Fashion.
It was terrible.
Bowl cuts.
What do I was going to say bleached hair,
Oh, yeah. Frosted tips.
Yeah.
frosted tips, which the Army now allows.
Oh, really? Oh, how
Because they're
hip.
new age.
I had a bunch of different fashion trends. I think the two worst things that I probably wore in the 90s were like those like ball bearing necklaces that are just like the giant balls. You just look like a douche. There's no way about it that you're a douche. And the other thing, I didn't have like the Jinko jeans, but like just like the overly baggy jeans that just like always get like anytime it rains, the bottom of those things just get completely fucked. Like they're all brown and soggy, and they start shredding at the bottom and ripping off, and they just look disgusting. You look like a big, disgusting, wet, soggy, fucking idiot.
Yeah, the 90s was the period of homeless chic.
Can we talk
Yeah.
about how in the early 90s everything was so bright that it would
Yeah.
just burn your goddamn retinas
Well, that was
when you looked at it?
Was that
That
the end
was-
of the 80s also,
Yeah.
kind of?
that's what I was about to say. It was the transition period between the 80s and the 90s. And the 80s was much more colorful. I would
80s was
say.
better for all 3 years I was in it.
I'm gonna send you guys a picture.
Oh.
This was me on whatever date, 92.
Oh, I'm excited. Nice.
Wow.
Why do you have this?
It's one of
yeah.
my home movies I transferred.
You definitely look 90s.
You look like Mario.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So where's Luigi?
I was actually going to bring up overalls too. Overalls was a real 90s thing.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that made me think of something. Because that's one of the things that like everybody had, right? But I want to show of hands. How many of you had some form of Charlotte Hornets merch?
No idea what you're even saying.
Oh, I know
Those
what the
are
Charlotte
words?
Hornets are.
It's a basketball team. Like for some reason, everyone around the country had like a Charlotte Hornets starter jacket, and I don't know why. They were like on clearance at Kmart or something all the time. I don't know.
You didn't even have to like be an actual fan of the team because I wasn't.
I don't know.
Like I wasn't,
was
but
like
like
3.
someone else was talking about that
Bro,
too. I remember.
Just today, the Charlotte Hornets came up at work because I work just north of Charlotte. And I think that the whole reason they were so heavily distributed to everywhere is because in the late 80s, all the banks set up shop in Charlotte and started just pumping money into the local sports scene and making like high-end restaurants to take their clients out to and big stadiums for celebrities to visit. So I think that was just the height of Charlotte sports spreading its tentacles into everything.
Oh, that's crazy.
It was just a very cool logo too. Like
That's true.
It just
and the
looked
colors.
appealing.
Like,
Yeah, it was a good
I
color
definitely
scheme.
remember seeing them. I just never had one.
I don't even remember seeing them, honestly.
Here's something. Show of hands, how many people had a denim jacket at some point in the 90s?
Oh, I did.
Oh yeah,
probably.
Yeah.
I watched a lot of Ernest.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Ernest goes to jail.
I was trying to basically be like him. I thought that shit was hilarious.
Ernest chases a squirrel through a church. You know, Ernest tries to learn Chinese but gives up.
Fashion, it's not 90s related, but today I had to go to Walmart for something. And I witnessed, I don't know if he was for real a furry, but this would be my first ever visual contact with someone I would potentially label as a furry. And I would venture to guess that this individual who is he was a male. He was in his young 20s or very high teens, I don't know. Had dog ears, the paw claw things, a tail, and the little booties, like fake paw on his shoes or whatever.
Ooh, yiff.
And
How did the tail
I've seen
attach?
I didn't look that hard.
I've seen it's like furry light, right? It's like just
Yeah.
accents of furry. I've seen it at like Warped Tour and stuff. It's
Yeah, well, this is
Very
at
light.
Walmart. So,
That sounds like the right place for it.
well, that's Warped Tour is no more, so it's
that's true.
spread into general society.
So this was your first even furry light encounter?
It was.
Lucky
It
man.
was.
Lucky man. You have avoided them thus
You're not
far.
going to.
Really?
Not going to the
How
right
often do you see them?
conventions.
I'm genuinely curious now.
You don't see them in their, what does that they call them? Not fursuits. They have like a name for it.
Fursona.
Fursona. Yeah.
Is that really
Oh.
it?
Yeah, instead of a persona, it's a fursona. Unless it's a cat, in which I guess maybe persona is accurate.
Great.
Yeah, you don't see them dressed like that all the time, but when you hang out with the freaks and the geeks, you're going to run across at least one instance where someone invites you to a party and you realize you really shouldn't have gone to that party. Although I'll point out they always do have the best and the most drugs. Like, they have to have a lot of drugs to do that.
Makes sense.
And don't get started on the diapers. They're fucked up people.
Why do they only pick furry animals, though?
Oh, they
like,
don't.
Why not, like, turtles?
They do.
Then, could you be a furry if you were a turtle?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't you be a scaly?
Oh, many an argument. Many an argument about that. I'm sure there's one that's a beautiful butterfly because he really loved A Bug's Life in the 90s.
Atrocious.
If only he dresses as a caterpillar first and transforms.
He's got the tiniest wings. Very
I'm a beautiful butterfly.
So we brought up fashion, toys. The next thing I was going to bring up was shows.
Ooh, yeah.
TV. Commercials, even.
Oh, God.
The commercials were legendary. They don't make them like that. I know I sound old, but the 90s commercials are wild, dude.
The infomercials were actually entertaining, too. Like, how many times did you just go to bed to the sweet voice of Ron Popeil telling you about his little toaster oven for the chickens? It was beautiful.
Is that the set it and forget it guy?
Yes. I forget it. The Showtime rotisserie. Yeah.
Ronco
Yep.
Ronco rotisserie. Set it and forget it. And then the Jack LaLanne power juicer. But when I think of commercials, I'm always thinking of like the shit where it's just like crazy like rock music, like AC/DC sounding shit, and it's like crossfire, you'll get caught up in the crossfire.
Or like the Capri Sun commercials where everybody turned into the Liquid Terminator.
Oh, dude,
Oh my
yeah,
God.
they're all the Silver Surfer for some reason, and they're just like, whoa, dude. Isn't
I was
it
thinking
crazy?
Alex Mack, actually.
It's the same thing. There was a lot of like weird commercials in the 90s too. Like a lot of the Got Milk stuff.
Oh, yeah.
That was kind of out there.
I was going to say, let's not forget the anti-drug commercials with the chick beating a frying pan on the wall, and this is your brain on heroin or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, no, that's an egg.
This is your brain on drugs. No, this is breakfast. I don't remember what I was actually gonna say now.
My bad, bruh.
No, it's cool. It's probably really stupid.
Yeah, that's why it's my bad. It would have been great. Would have loved to hear
I remember there was one commercial. It had to do with the drugs thing. Is like
Was she like melts
like
into the
this.
couch?
She used to be.
Yeah.
Well, she was like deflated. Yeah, she was like a deflated
I think my favorite was the
balloon.
one where it's just really badly drawn, like some dude smoking a joint next to his girlfriend, and she's just like, ew. And then an alien lands and steals his girlfriend. And they're like, don't do drugs, or aliens will steal your girlfriend.
I'm willing to bet that was creeping up on the 2000s, though. Those commercials.
It was getting close. Yeah, getting to that absurdist explosion that happened right after.
Does
the
anybody
90s.
remember the old Pizza Hut commercials with like Pizza Face and like the evil pizza cutter guy that was basically like Mr. Bill?
Yeah.
It was.
I
It was the
remember that.
Mr. Bill guy. They paid him to do those commercials.
Oh, it was the
It's
same.
kind of like the first like Tim and Eric
Yeah.
sort of commercial thing.
Yeah, he's like, oh no, he's gonna cut me in half. That shit was awesome. Now that's a very 90s commercial in my opinion.
So what are our some of our hallmark 90s TV shows? And I'm going to go ahead and steal MTV because we brought it up earlier, and I'm just going to say it now. MTV of the 90s is something that will never happen again.
Beavis and Butthead was great.
Beavis and Butthead was great.
That's a very 90s show.
It was such a good show that they made an entire spin-off about
Yeah.
the neighbor that is now more well-known than Beavis and Butthead.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say Simpsons is like it started in
yeah.
'89, but that's like essential.
Yeah.
Spider-Man, X-Men, Power Rangers,
Bro, here's one
all
that
of those.
not a lot of people are gonna bring up, but was quintessentially '90s. Gargoyles. Remember that shit?
Oh yeah, that was a
Yeah.
good show.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
I wasn't
I
allowed
only
to
got
watch
the-
that. It was too satanic.
That's why we weren't allowed to watch Rocco's Modern Life. Or
I got
Oh.
kicked out of Adam's parents' house for wearing a job for a cowboy shirt with like a fucking like evil looking skull with horns and shit. But then later he was like, when we moved in together, his dad shook my hand. He was like, "I misjudged you, son." I'm like, "Oh, that's cool."
no, you didn't. She'd be like, "Man, no, you didn't. You got a good head on your shoulders. I'm gonna corrupt your son now. I'm gonna go make him like listen to AC/DC and burn a cross or something."
Dale, do you remember that
Church camp
we
is
were
a
forced
big
to go
reason
to?
why it took so long for me to go back to the church, because I was like, listen, nothing that's true needs a clown to entertain me while you teach it to me.
I just remember the puppet show where the puppets were basically the younger boy puppet was introduced to like AC/DC and Ozzy Osbourne and all these classic rock bands, and he was convinced by his parent puppets that they were satanic, and the puppet in front of all of us young children got a Louisville Slugger out and started smashing these CDs in front of all of us of AC/DC and Ozzy Osbourne and all these other bands. So and he beat Satan that day, and I was like, "What the hell are we watching?" Like I am so confused. I loved AC/DC at the time. I was like, "Am I going to hell?"
Like, you have to destroy all of your AC/DC and Ozzy Osbourne CDs. I'm like, oh great. The only thing that my father gave me before he abandoned our family. That's definitely something I'm going to do, sure. They're like, oh, if you read Harry Potter, you're going to hell. I'm like, how about you go to hell? They said you can't wear shorts to church. I'm like, I am 8. I don't choose what I wear.
Wow. That sounds worse than mine, actually, and I didn't think that was possible. But like, did you guys go to a church that demonized Pokemon?
Oh yeah,
because that was like what pushed me away hardcore. I was like, how
Pokemon's cool.
How can you say that this is like satanic? Because they're psychic types, and because they're like monsters that you're making fight, that you're like taking possession of, like a demon. Like, what? You're reading way too far into this.
We went to a Southern Baptist church for a while.
Okay, that makes sense.
And that was the reason why it was.
You just gotta get ridiculous with people like that. Be like, I bet you watch like fucking sports. Well, let me tell you, the Pittsburgh Pirates. Were you like pirates? Were you like stealing things? Who's in trouble now with the big boss man upstairs?
Arr.
I wish I had that kind of head on me at 6 and 5 years
then I was
old.
just rolling around on the floor in church.
Speaking of things that were banned by church people, Sean, do you remember when I got kicked out of babysitting for reading Harry Potter? Like, they told me I couldn't come in the house because I was reading Harry Potter. I'm like, it is the late spring. There is no rain. There's perfectly clear sunshine. What, are you telling me to go outside and read my book? Okay.
By the Bowers?
Yeah, I remember I got kicked out for like a week or two or something like that, and then Ma drove home and saw me just sitting at the end of the road reading my book and flipped shit.
Yeah, this was the same father, that father. He brought me, because we went to their church, which, looking back at it now, I distinctly feel like Mom used them taking us to church as a way to get rid of us for a little bit, since she was a single mother, which is totally understandable now that I'm a parent. I understand why she did that. But
Yeah.
I remember going to church one day, and his daughter and I, keep in mind, I am like 4, maybe 5 at the time. No idea about, trying to hit on girls or anything of that nature. We're playing in the church, just playing tag or something, completely innocent of children of our age. He brings me outside and screams at me and tells me that I'm being sinful and that God is upset with me and all this stuff. And I'm like crying, like just ugly crying, because up to that point I trusted that guy. I was very happy. I was totally content. I had no idea that I was doing anything wrong. Now I'm being told that I'm going to hell, essentially. And when
For playing tag.
I remember when we were getting dropped back off at the house, he gives me a Bible and he goes, "It's about time you started to read this." And I was like, I don't know how to fucking read. Like I'm not, like, what is going on?
Looking back, like, I thought that they were real smart and pious when I was, 6 and they were doing their shit. But looking back, they were really extremely dumb.
Oh, yeah.
Like, they were deeply backwards inbred dumb. Like, their family tree must look like a wickerwork basket, just weaving in and out of itself.
So that made me think of something that I guess I would say it's probably overall a good thing because of, what you just described. But I would say a big difference between the 90s and today is that people do not try to step out of their own sphere of influence and parent the community's children as much anymore. That's sort of seen as a big faux pas. Back in the 90s, it was every adult walking down the street, if they saw you doing something wrong, they would treat you like you were their kid.
That's true.
And try to tell you what to do, how
Thank
to
you so
fix
much
it,
for
whatever.
taking this crazy tangent I took us off on and tying it back to the 90s, because I was desperately trying to think of how to do that, and you did it. So I was close to there, but you found a ticket.
I loved how we are wrapping this up, because sadly we have to wrap it up because we've already been recording for upwards of 58 minutes, so we're gonna have to wrap it up.
Really?
I know, when we get on
So many more 90s shows I could have thought of.
I know, when we get on these
bro, I know.
talks, it gets all be a lot of fun, and we just lose
I
track
know.
of time. But it's okay that we
Didn't
talked.
even bring up Ren and Stimpy, Hey Arnold.
Just all the Nicktoons and then the
Home
Cartoon
Improvement.
Network with
Home Improvement.
That's the number one for me. That embodies the 90s.
We're gonna end it here, and it's good that we're ending it here based off the conversation that we were talking about just now, because a potential next topic for the next episode might just very well be religion. Either that or video games. So very big difference, but we'll see depending on who's available for next week's recording and what we're feeling like recording that week. So as always, I absolutely enjoyed this all the way through, and I appreciate everybody here for showing up and taking your time out of your schedules to record. And if you are listening, thank you for listening and making it all the way to the end. And I hope to see everyone on the next episode of Terrible Tirades.